Greetings, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to the third week in what I'm coining Master Path May. For the last 2 weeks with the Sun in Taurus, the collective conscious has been raising the bar on their potential to manifest. Everyone is seeking to now manifest at the Master Path level. But this week, the Sun moves into Gemini, exposing where your thoughts are, and Sensei says it's time to get rid of your cray-cray. From my smartphone to yours, keep streaming for your weekly Namaste Today. Welcome to Namaste Today, the perfect way to set up a life of play. I'm your host and the Sensei to serious joy, Christopher Witecki. Welcome back, my fellow Earth citizen. Namaste. Well, if you're just tuning in, it has been a rough sea of consciousness this year in 2018. We have been doing nothing but improving and growing the entire time. For the last 2 weeks, we focused on raising our soul capital, our capacity to manifest, to what I call the Master Path level. And now that we move into Gemini, it's going to expose all of our old, antiquated thoughts, all of our inner dialogue that doesn't serve us. Basically, it's time to face all of our cray-cray. So this week in our show, I'm going to talk about how the universe is pushing for us to grow at a very accelerated rate over the next week. And I'm going to talk about the soul collective and how it's going to be affected by several grand trines. And then later in your tea time, I'm going to talk about how you're maturing at a rapid rate and where you're going to mature. But first, let's take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is from Monday, May 21st to Friday, May 25th, 2018. Looking at your 5-day moodcast, it's clear to me we're in Gemini due to the bipolar nature of the week. Cloudy, sunny, cloudy, sunny, cloudy. Let's drill down. On Monday, it's cloudy, overcast, but heartfelt. Step 0 rules the day, opening the vortex to Gemini, and a moon in Leo has you dreaming about the future. On Tuesday, it's sunny and hyper-aware. Step 1, I love rules the day, but a moon in Virgo kind of rains on the parade. On Wednesday, it's cloudy, overcast, and clearing fears. Step 2 rules the day, making emotion push through the day, and Venus at step 4 suggests a minor emotional breakdown. On Thursday, it's sunny and learning as the moon moves into Libra and creates a grand trine in air, bringing clarity. And then on Friday, it's cloudy, overcast, irritable with a chance of storms. Step 4 rules the day, and a grand trine in water forces you to mature. Looking at the upcoming week, it appears the collective conscious is going to be growing at a rapid rate. In my next segment, Soul Collective, I'm going to talk about the grand trines and what you can expect. Taking a sneak peek at this upcoming week, this week the Soul Collective is discovering inner dialogue. Now, as I mentioned in the open, we have been growing at a phenomenal rate this year. I think 2018 is one of the most powerful years for us escalating ourselves out of the karma we were born to and onto the story we were born to live. A lot of us think about the life we want to live, but we haven't actually been pushed to go there until 2018. I think 2017 kind of created a crack in the foundation, and in 2018 that foundation or those two worlds are separating. So as we came into the year, we first set new control goals in Capricorn. Then we decided we belong somewhere else in Aquarius. Then we decided it was time to get onto the path we were born to live in Pisces. Then we decided it was time to go to the winged ego and let go of the old defensive ego in Aries. And in the last 4 weeks in Taurus, we've been raising our fertility to the Master Path level. And that brings us to Gemini. If you don't know, Gemini is our intellectual state of awareness, what I affectionately call the smartass, our mind that's always smarting off. And you'll notice in all this growth this year, all these different states of awareness that we focused on, we have not really focused on our mind. We had a Mercury retrograde in Aries, and so I think our mind was kind of forced to let go of the old ego and embrace a new way of thinking about our actions or thinking about our character. But I don't think our mind has actually been raised to the level yet of this master path. In other words, I believe that although we have shiny new clothes and maybe a new car and we're heading to a new destination, it's still the old broken down radio station in our head. So this week is about some rapid growth. We're going to grow at a phenomenal rate due to 3 grand trines that happen over 3 different elements. Now, if you don't know, a grand trine is when 3 planets create kind of a triangle in the sky. And the reason why it's so important is because when they're at this complementary angle, they can share energy. And so what happens is you have 3 states of your own awareness. They're kind of coordinating. They're kind of working on the same team. And when that happens, you can get far more progress in your ability to see things or understand things or comprehend things. This week, we're going to have 3 different grand trines in the first week of Gemini. 1 grand trine will be in Earth, 1 grand trine will be in air, and 1 grand trine will be in water and stick around for almost a month. No kidding. So the universe is heavily invested in our personal growth. Now, for starters, let's talk about Gemini. These first 10 steps of Gemini have to do basically with our internal dialogue. So the Gemini consciousness, like all consciousness, has 3 tiers of awareness. The first tier, known as the first decan or chapter 1, is really about the way we talk to ourselves. And for most of us, this is where most of the brain damage is, okay? Like the way we speak to ourselves. In fact, we all are in such inner dialogue all the time. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly like a TV station in my head. I'll play other people's conversations with me. I'll play out, fights with somebody. Like my mind is always doing these things. And we're so busy in our head, we don't very often look at how we're talking to ourselves, the tone we're taking, the prejudice that we're adopting in our inner dialogue, and most importantly, we probably haven't identified the old thinking. And I believe that's what this week is about. This week is about identifying that internal dialogue that is destructive instead of constructive. And that's the line I think we have to observe. Are these thoughts in your head making a better life, a better you, pointing you to the sunshine, pointing you towards the rainbow and pot of gold? Or are your minds and your mental thoughts always cutting you down, always criticizing you, always taking the negative approach and response to things? So I think what God Universe's plan is, if I may be so bold to guess what God is thinking, is the universe is going to force different parts of your life to grow at a rapid rate this week, right when you are exploring your inner dialogue. And I believe the universe saying, hey, it's time to grow, will expose in this growth where your mind is not playing ball. So I expect everyone's mind to be kind of a party pooper. I expect everyone's mind to have some destructive thoughts, to have some pessimistic thoughts. And this isn't for you to feel bad, on the contrary. It's for you to see that your life is changing at an amazing growth and a rapid rate, and your mind is not up with the program. It's not it's not speaking or serving the king or queen, which is your heart. Now, we have a lot of interesting things that have happened in the last 2 weeks. Like last week, I don't know about you, but we had the new moon in Taurus, which was the beginning of the week. And then on Wednesday, Uranus moved to step 0 Taurus, and Mars moved to step 0 Aquarius. And last Wednesday, I felt energy just drop, like completely. It was like we were on a roller coaster with Uranus and Aries, and then all of a sudden energy just went totally to the bottom. And that kind of is us starting a new cycle with these 2 extreme planets. This week, that cycle sort of begins. Mars in Aquarius means that our ego this week is pushing us to where we belong. We just spent 4 weeks working on our master path manifestation, trying to draw in abundance, trying to plant seeds to spiritual crops we want to grow. And we were very focused on control and being able to control the crops. Now it's time with Mars in Aquarius to be going out in the world and seeing where your new gold belongs. See where your new market belongs. So part of the growth this week is the universe saying, hey, go out in the world and figure out where you belong, figure out what your place is in the world, figure out where you fit into the big picture. So there's a push going in that direction. Uranus this week is actually at step 0 Taurus, and I'm not really expecting very much push from Uranus, But Venus, which is the planet of receiving, has now moved into Cancer, and this is the other area of rapid growth this week. With Venus in Cancer, we are now starting to open up to our emotions and starting to open up to our feelings. Of course, the Sun moves into Cancer next, after Gemini. But what it suggests is, as we are going through this internal dialogue week, the universe is just opening the portal or the floodgates of all of your feelings about things. And this is one of the areas where I think the universe is pushing you to grow really fast. You're going to have to grow fast when it comes to where you belong in the world. You're going to have to emotionally grow up and open up to your feelings at the same time. And I think this big push for growth is going to be what uncovers negative dialogue or destructive thinking. Now, I mentioned this a little earlier. We have 3 grand trines this week, okay? And I told you what they were about. The first grand trine is actually in Earth. So on Tuesday and Wednesday, the moon in Virgo is going to grand trine Saturn and Mercury, basically. And what this does is start to unite all of your earthly manifestations. So I think on Tuesday and Wednesday, you're going to see, as one of the growth points, you're going to see your Taurus manifestation intentions start to take off. You're going to see basically all your sprouts grow up to little bigger sprouts. Okay? So I think part of the growth in the beginning of the week is going to be keeping your mind positive to not shift all over your crops, shift all over your manifestations. I think your manifestation is going to take off and you're not going to have to put any energy into making them grow. But I think you're going to find that your mind might be knuckle dragging a bit, might be pessimistic, might be deconstructive, taking the downside, not with the program. So Tuesday and Wednesday, with the moon in Virgo, we're going to be very hyper aware of all sorts of critical details and little facets of a reality that we don't normally pay attention to. And I think as the grand trine is pushing your creations forward and the moon is nitpicky in Virgo, this is going to expose, especially with that moon in Virgo, all of your negative inner dialogue. So we want to observe on those 2 days, especially on Wednesday, which is step 2 day. Going to be very emotional. So people are going to be really cranky. And I think we're clearing fears. Then as we move on to Thursday, we then get a grand trine in air. So this will be your first opportunity on Thursday to kind of set the record straight inside of your mind. On Thursday, you're going to learn, you're going to put some pieces together. You're probably going to comprehend that your crops are growing, that your manifestations are moving forward, that everything is going correct. And your mind is probably going to learn or discover on Thursday where it's really not on board the big plan or the master path. So I think Thursday is going to be a powerful learning day. And the grand trine happens from the moon in Libra to the sun and then to Mars in Aquarius. So one of the things about Thursday as well is that your mind is starting to learn very fast about what it doesn't know, learn very fast about where it holds yourself back or it's kind of destructive. But also Thursday is when you start thinking about, okay, my crops are growing. Where do I belong? Do I bring them to market? Do I move to this place? So you start thinking about where do these crops fit into the big picture on Thursday. And then on Friday, we have step 4 ruling the day. And step 4 is breakdown. And I'm expecting things to not go right. Okay, like step 4 in Gemini does mean that our mind will have some sort of holy shift or breakdown. And that means that something won't be what you expected, or you'll realize you were thinking the wrong thing. You'll realize that your mind has been your own enemy. Because the mind can be so narrow-minded, when there's a surprise or a breakthrough, step 4, when it comes to Gemini or intellect, usually it's a huge surprise because the mind was so much having blinders and looking at one thing that when it sees another truth, we're kind of out of our mind. So I'm expecting the end of the week to be a little dramatic. I think you're going to have some sort of mental break. I don't want to say breakdown as in being hospitalized, but I do think you're going to, your mind will be blown on Friday. And into Saturday, you start to get your mind around the right thinking. And Saturday is step 5. And that's really the first chapter of Gemini is from step 0 to step 5, because step 5 is a grandmaster step of Gemini. Now, what happens on Friday, pushing us further, is we create the third grand trine, which is represented by Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter. Neptune and Jupiter are exactly trine this week at step 16, and that means that our emotions are being attuned to our highest spiritual good. And when Venus moves into Cancer, it creates this grand trine. And so as our mind is contemplating whether or not we're crazy, the universe is actually kind of spiritually giving us a back rub for us to find our emotional peace. So it's kind of bipolar. Our mind will be crazy, but our emotions will be maturing. You know what I mean? And at the same time, we're growing at a rapid rate this week. We're growing in our ability to manifest. We're growing in our ability to comprehend our thoughts and our intellectual process. And at the end of the week, we begin to grow emotionally at a rapid rate. Now, this grand trine between Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune actually goes on till about June 10th, from what I can tell, as far as how much it's in effect, which tells me that everyone on Earth is going to be emotionally maturing until June 10th. What does that mean? It means that as you are climbing in your intellect and trying to find the right attitude and the right inner dialogue, you're going to emotionally be kind of pushed to expunge your emotional baggage. And that's going to be really what the Sun in Cancer is about, when our heart gets rid of all of our baggage. But that's one of the areas we haven't really worked on this year. We've worked on all sorts of different states, but our mind and our emotions haven't caught up to the program. So I do expect as of Friday that there's going to be a lot of emotional maturing. And emotional maturing, in simple terms, means you have to emotionally cope with something. A lot of people kind of put emotions off and like, I'll deal with that later, I'll deal with that when I see him, I'll deal with that when I see her. Well, Sensei says you'll deal with that starting Friday. Okay, and you will emotionally need to, and what it's about is just emotionally being able to cope, emotionally being able to nurture yourself and ground yourself. And I think this is all preparation for things going on coming up this year. Now, as far as mental progress is concerned, that's really what Gemini is about. It's about our inner dialogue. Even though the universe has you growing with manifestation, has you growing with intellect, has you growing with emotion, we're actually trying to get our thoughts to the next level. We're trying to start thinking differently is what we want to do. But Mercury himself is actually back in Taurus and moves from step 13 Taurus to step 22 Taurus. So there's going to be kind of two parallel tracks this week. On the one hand, you're trying to root out your inner dialogue that doesn't serve you. So a lot of this week is about catching yourself being negative, catching yourself talking back to yourself, catching yourself, being prejudiced or narrow-minded. That's one layer. The other layer with Mercury from 13 to 22 Taurus is about thinking on a higher plane. So this is the other dimension where you're probably going to realize that you want master manifestation, you want a master path, you want to pull in the gold and win the contest or whatever it is. You want the big stuff, but your mind is still acting petty and thinking on the lower level. So this week, it's not just about rooting out your negative thinking and your negative inner dialogue, but it's also about reconstructing your positive dialogue and starting to think bigger, think higher, and discover what that next level of thinking involves. So it's time to think on a master path level or think on a master manifest level. So going through the week, I think there's going to be, for each person, two major influences. One is the Sun is moving into Gemini, so we have to kind of root out our negative inner dialogue. And the other I want to bring up is Mars in Aquarius. So I think this is worth talking about for all 12 signs. Go steep yourself some tea, and let's have our weekly tea time. Hello, my friend, and welcome to our tea time. This week's tea time topic is maturing at a rapid rate. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this year has already been a little difficult, and looking at the planets and the cosmic galactic clock, the universe is just turning up the fire. We're going to grow even faster and at a greater rate. And from what I understand, that's kind of how ascension happens. As you ascend, you actually end up moving faster energetically, and your vibration actually becomes higher and faster. So it's kind of like the difference between a duck and a hummingbird, right? So the universe is pulling us towards that hummingbird sort of vibration. And this week, in that effort, we're focusing on two new areas for that hummingbird. The first is our internal dialogue. As I mentioned, just about every birdie out there is still a little cray-cray. We all have our old thinking. We have our old smartass. We might be trying to improve our life, but our minds have still been stuck in our spiritual gutter, so to speak. So this week, the universe is going to help you identify. In other words, it'll probably come in plain sight to you, either through conversation, blogging, or just you talking to yourself in the bathtub. You know what I mean? Talking to myself now. Either way, the universe is going to expose, hey, this thinking is probably holding you back. It's time to take this thinking to the next level. So for each of the 12 signs, I'm going to talk about where you need to take your thinking to the next level energetically. Now, the other interesting aspect of this week is that Mars moves into Aquarius. This is a big deal because Aquarius is where we belong in the world. When the sun was in Aquarius in late January, early February, our heart was kind of putting a pin on the map and saying, I belong here, and putting that pin in. But we didn't actually go there. We just marked it as a destination that we want to reach. Now that Mars is in Aquarius, we're going to begin to actually move our spiritual ship toward whatever this destination is. And this is another reason why your smart-ass mind can't be in the spiritual gutter, because it's time to go for Paradise Island. It's time to go for what we want. And the other interesting aspect about this Mars Aquarius is it's going to come actually in 2 chapters. So between now and June 26th, you're going to be kind of aiming for wherever your pin on the map is. Like, I want to be here. I want to be the professor. I want to be the boss. I want to be the owner. I want to be, the star. Whatever it is, that's what Aquarius is. Where do I want to be in the world? Where do I belong in the world? And what's going to happen is we're going to start marching towards that direction between now and June 26th. And then Mars is going to retrograde. And what that means is all of a sudden our parade is going to stop. And we're going to start to move backwards. So from June 26th until August 26th, I think, maybe August 28th to be precise, you're going to end up backpedaling on whatever this destination is. And I'm not exactly sure why we're being asked to backpedal. One of the areas is going to be that we're going to realize that a lot of the things that we pinned on the map, we kind of chose that from the old ego. And so I think once we hit the end of June, we're going to realize, oh, this might not be the destination I want to get to. This might not be the best way to go about it. So the point is that we have a lot of work this year into understanding where we belong in the world, and we have no choice but to set out between now and June 26th with our current destination in mind. But what Sensei is saying is probably by August, you may change the destination. So for each of the 12 signs, I'm going to talk about where you are rooting out that negative inner dialogue on the one hand, and then I'm going to point out the area of life that you're going to charge towards till June, but don't get too attached to that destination because it may very well change by August with Mars retrograding. In fact, I think we're going to make a lot of changes through the summer, but we have no choice but to get started. And of course, as always, I'm going to walk through all 12 signs and put up on the side here the sign I am talking about so you can scroll through in the video to your friends, loved ones, or your rising sign. So let's begin with Aries. Aries are the purebreds of the zodiac. They literally are clearing out their inner dialogue. So for the sun in their 3rd house, it is time for Aries to think different. Now, out of all the signs, Aries have the most to think about because with Uranus leaving Aries, the universe is done poking at them when it comes to coming into their strength and a new character. And they literally need to reprogram their mind from A to Z so that it's in alignment with this higher intention of who they are. So I think Aries might be a little cray-cray, okay, because they have a lot of, you can just kind of run with this analysis, but they probably have a lot of defensive thinking, defensive thoughts. Their mind is probably still on the war path in some areas. Their mind is probably pushing too hard, not going for the path of least resistance. So their mind is very much aligned to the old ego and needs to be reprogrammed and updated. And it begins by listening to your inner dialogue. With Mars in Aquarius, Arises are now setting out to find their place in the world. And it makes total sense that they're going to set out right now with certain kind of assumptions of where they belong in the world. But after their mind is reprogrammed and their feelings are reprogrammed, as Mars retrogrades, they may decide by August that they belong somewhere else in the world. So Arises are charging out and, let's say, exploring their world literally. That means they're going to begin to build a public reputation or build a social network following, or maybe relocate to another location. But I wouldn't go so far as relocating just yet, Aries, because like I said, Mars is going to retrograde. You may not like it when you get there. So for Aries, it's about thinking different and finding out where they belong in the world. Tauruses. Tauruses are having to reprogram their inner dialogue when it comes to their self-esteem. And this is very important, Taurus, because Uranus has just moved into Taurus. And it's going to be there for 7 years. It's going to kick your astro and force you to raise the bar every year for the next 7 years. Okay, so Tauruses are just going to go up, 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 and up, and up. I think a lot of Tauruses still have inner dialogue that does not honor their real value, that does not honor their real potential. So Tauruses are literally having poverty thinking being erased this week, or at least identifying your poverty thinking this week. Now, with Mars in Aquarius, Tauruses are now going to start to go out into the world. They're going to go out in their first chapter of this Uranus and Taurus, and they're looking for their career path. Tauruses probably are very clear on what their career is going to do, but like I said, with Mars retrograde, be prepared. There could be some unexpected turns of events through the summer. So you should absolutely move forward with where you think your career is going, and you should absolutely rewrite your inner dialogue to be supportive of those career goals, but keep in mind the career goals may change. Gemini! Happy birthday, Gemini. Gemini are rewriting their dialogue, their inner dialogue, when it comes to their defensiveness. And Gemini's, usually their defensiveness is that they leave. Like they don't usually, they'll have a lot of negative thoughts, but they don't usually say them out loud, for instance, about being defensive. But Geminis are coming into their place in society. They're coming into their career path, and their minds have been wired up until now to be more defensive than is necessary. They've been defending their old self, basically. So Geminis are rewriting that defensive language with themselves and writing it for their new future in the world. With Mars in Aquarius, Geminis are about to embark on a new learning path. So Geminis might be thinking about going to school. Geminis might be thinking about traveling. Geminis might be thinking about their thesis or writing a book or bringing all of their intellect together. And Gemini, you should think. You should align your defensive thoughts to being productive and positive and on the path of your learning. But be advised, whatever you choose to major in may change by August. You might end up changing your mind. Oh, that's a surprise. Cancer. Cancers have it kind of tough this week. They are actually facing their subconscious negative inner dialogue. And yes, it's subconscious. So a lot of Cancer's moodiness, they don't realize it, is that their mind is repeating thoughts over and over again, and they're not even conscious of these thoughts that repeat. They don't pay attention to them. So they have a lot of negative inner dialogue, and it's probably based on the way you were raised, the way you've been treated, the way that guy treated you. It's probably all justified, but we're at a point now, Cancer, where that negative talk is going to keep you down. It's going to keep you from being in relationships that you want. It's going to keep you from your career path that you're meant to be. So I think for Cancers, it's kind of a meditative week. It's time to meditate, see where you're triggered, pay attention to your dreams, and notice try to catch yourself in this negative cycle of thinking. Now, with Mars moving into Aquarius, Cancers are now breaking ground on new intimacy rules. So Cancers are not quite sure how they should be close to people or how they shouldn't, where they should draw the line or where they shouldn't, who they should be connected to and who they shouldn't. So they're kind of in and out of the hot tub right now. And Cancer, I don't think you're going to be very clear on what intimacy and closeness and transformation is, probably till the end of the summer. But it is time to get moving on what you do know as far as trust and personal boundaries, and get moving on clearing out that subconscious negative self-dialogue. Leos. Leos are now moving into their social belonging. And Leos have a lot of internal dialogue about where they believe they belong. So a lot of Leos won't say it, but they think that they belong being king or queen, that they belong being the star, that they belong all these different things, which is completely fine. The question is, are your internal dialogue, is your thoughts supporting you, Leo, in these intentions, or are your thoughts negative, saying no one will ever accept me, blah 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 blah, right? So Leos are having to rewrite their internal dialogue when it comes to where they belong in the world and their chances in the world. Now, with Mars moving into Aquarius, Leos are about to move forward with mirage changes. That means the way they treat themselves. And I think that this is going to be a whole summer long for Leos. They're going to be changing basically their relationship to themselves, how they treat themselves, how they view themselves. Right now, it is absolutely time to be focused on that from the perspective of removing your negative thoughts, removing your negative dialogue about who you are in the world or what your world potential is. But I think as the sun moves into Cancer, Leos are going to clear out karma, and then the sun moves into Leo, they're going to rebirth themselves. So this Mars in Aquarius of changing the relation to themselves, it has several chapters. So don't assume you have it down immediately, okay, Your Majesty? Give it a little time. Virgos! Virgos with the sun in Gemini are looking at their internal dialogue about their future. And Virgos tend to be a worrier of their future, not warrior, worrier. Okay, like they tend to worry. They tend to look at the worst case scenarios. So their internal dialogue for the future usually is negative based. And the reason why it's negative, I think, is to prevent the negative. But I think if you spend too much time trying to prevent the negative, you end up manifesting it because thoughts become things. So it's time for Virgos to change their internal dialogue about the future, to change their internal dialogue about their career, to change their internal dialogue about their legacy. A lot of people write me and say, I don't have a career. What does that mean for me? Your legacy, your children, your artwork, whatever you leave behind. It's what you end up accomplishing on Earth. So Virgos need to clean up the internal dialogue about the future. Now with Mars moving into Aquarius, Virgos are going to start working on a new lifestyle. And by lifestyle, we start and begin with how you live in your own self. I know a lot of Virgos live in their own self in misery, okay? They live in misery. They're worried, they're upset, they're concerned about the future. You know, they may look solid on the outside, but on the inside, they're usually kind of flipping out a little bit, from what I understand. So the universe is rewiring the way you live in your body, the way you live in your moment all summer long. And this week, you set out to change the way you live in your body, first by changing your outlook for the future, making it more positive, making it constructive versus destructive. So Virgos are creating a constructive dialogue about the future, and they are rewiring how they live in their body in the moment. Libras! Libras are actually changing their belief in themselves. You know, the thing about Libra is they're very skeptical to believe. They're very much like, we'll see. And then when it happens, they don't necessarily even believe that it is going to stick. That's because Libras are so flexible, they can go back and forth with things. So their internal dialogue is full of self-doubt. It's full, a lot of times, of, well, we'll see, la la. And so because they are kind of edging on this negative kind of, basically they're preparing for the worst, I think is what it is. But it ends up making your internal dialogue about believing in yourself kind of null. So Libras need to rewrite the dialogue around believing in themselves, okay? Which is owning what you do know and being open to what you don't know. To me, that's the balance. Now, the interesting thing about Libra is Mars in Aquarius means that Libras are going to change their relationship to their own heart. And you may think that Libras are really good to themselves because they are good with other people in relationships, but usually Libras ignore their heart and do not follow what their heart wants. That's because they're such peacemakers, they're always sacrificing what their heart wants for other people. And what the astrology is suggesting is, part of the reason why you sacrifice what your heart wants is because of your negative internal dialogue of not believing. Okay, so it's time to move forward with what your heart wants and observe your internal dialogue to see whether or not it is on course with the truth. And the truth is what your heart tells you. Scorpios! Scorpios are going to be changing their internal dialogue about trust. and that's huge, right? I don't know if you know any Scorpios personally. I have a pack of them that I call my best friends. They protect me. But I know inside their head, they don't trust shift. Okay, like their internal dialogue is like, yeah, go ahead. Watch, he's going to screw it up. Like their mind is always like, watch, it's going to, they're, like is always smarting off that it's not going to be something they can trust. And so their mind tends to obsess on whether or not something is trustworthy and is constantly looking out to see if it's trustworthy. All this internal dialogue about not trusting has to go, Scorpio. If you trust, good. If you don't trust, don't. But none of this reaffirming all the time, just waiting to get screwed over again, okay? That internal dialogue is not going to work. Now, Mars into Aquarius is actually pushing for Scorpios to have a better emotional foundation. So what the astrology is suggesting is a lot of Scorpios don't feel secure because their mind doesn't trust. Okay, so because their mind is always negative and not trusting, they end up not feeling emotionally secure at the end of the day. They don't feel safe at the end of the day. So it's time to move forward with what you can do to feel better, but realize it's going to take the entire summer for you, Scorpio, to actually feel grounded till this Mars goes direct again in August. Sagittariuses actually kind of literally have to observe their language to themselves. What they are changing is their mirage language. That means how they talk to themselves. And you know, I think Sages are very optimistic on the outside, but on the inside, I think they can be kind of pessimistic. They can kind of be mopey. They can kind of be worried like it's not going to turn out. It's like on the outside, they're like Tinkerbell telling us that everything is great, but on the inside, I think they have different dialogue with themselves that where they kind of look, maybe it's preparing for the worst. I mean, I think that's part of our old grounded ego, but their internal dialogue is not on the level with themselves, whatever their reasons are. So it's time for Sages to adopt new, positive, constructive conversation to yourself. It's time to be a fair partner to yourself, and it starts intellectually. It starts with the way you think. Now, with Mars moving into Aquarius, that's precisely what's going to change the way you think. So Sages have been caught in sort of webs of thinking. Like they kind of end up thinking according to the culture they're visiting. So if they're among pessimistic people, they will kind of think and talk pessimistically. They are chameleons. They can fit into any kind of society. And their mind has always been kind of like willing to adopt or reject based on where they are, but their mind hasn't necessarily been in tune with their heart's desires and what they want to pull off. So you're going to start communicating differently altogether, Sagittarius. And what the universe is saying is, if you want to communicate according to your needs and not the world's, it begins with talking to yourself differently. It begins with a new internal dialogue that's dedicated just to you, not to fitting into the world. Capricorns are actually learning a new dialogue. This is kind of interesting. Basically, the conversation to your body. And you're like, what is that about? Well, when you go, I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm worried, that's all conversation dialogue to your body. Your body hears all of that and goes, okay, I guess we're sick. Okay, I guess we're tired. Okay, I guess we can't pull this off. And Capricorns have a lot of internal dialogue where they are thinking about and worrying about the worst happening in the moment. Again, I think this is a way of keeping bad things from happening, but what ends up happening is your body takes the hit for all of that. It develops dis-ease, it develops all sorts of medical issues, and it lowers your energy. So Capricorns need to adopt a new, positive, constructive dialogue with their body, where they're encouraging themselves in the moment, and they are positive in the moment, and we're keeping conversation that's positive and productive in the moment. Now, Mars moving into Aquarius means that Capricorns are going to be earning money and feeling valuable in different ways now. So Capricorns are basically going to change their financial business between now and September, in my opinion. They're going to change what they do for business. They might add on a new business, they might not add on a new business, but this is the first stage, and what the universe is suggesting is part of the reason why you're in certain business or you have a certain income potential is due to the fact that you negatively talk to your body all the time and put out this poor me vibration or this I'm sick, I'm tired vibration. So the first step of raising your soul capital and finding your new business is making your business in the moment positive, constructive, and supportive. So your conversation to your body. Aquarius. Aquariuses are actually changing their thinking about love. And I think Aquariuses have probably weird dialogue about love. Remember, Leo is love, their opposite side, and Aquarius is belonging. So it's love and belonging between the two. And Aquariuses are very focused on the belonging part, where things belong, things are in their right place. And Aquariuses usually will forego their heart's desires for the big picture. So an Aquarius will put down the horse, even though they love the horse, if it's the right thing to do, for instance, so it doesn't suffer. Never mind that the Aquarius is hurting, their heart is broken, that the horse is gone. Aquariuses tend to go cold on themselves. And a lot of their language, I think, their internal dialogue, actually talks them out of love all the time. And that might be negative thoughts about themselves, or it's never going to come, or I wish it could come, or whatever. So Aquariuses are rewriting their internal dialogue about love, about their heart getting what it wants. And it's time for your thoughts to be constructive, productive, and on the path to serious joy. Now, Mars is moving into Aquarius. Okay, so with Mars in Aquarius, Aquariuses stand to be, and the retrograde coming up to the summer, Mars actually goes back to Capricorn too. We'll talk about that in another show. But with Mars in Aquarius, it does mean that the universe is changing what Aquariuses do and the action Aquariuses take. And the first chapter of this from the universe is, okay, Aqua, before you change what you do and the actions you take, let's change your inner dialogue about love. It is time to think differently about love. It's time to think differently about the pursuit of love. And what the universe is saying is, once you are thinking differently about the pursuit of love, you will be more clear on the appropriate action to take. But I gotta say, Aquas, if you're trying to figure out who you want to be when you grow up, Sensei says you probably won't know until September, so be patient with yourself. And then lastly, the Pisces, the fishies. Pisces is kind of interesting, but Pisces are changing their inner dialogue about their feelings, okay? And that's how Pisces ground. Believe it or not, they ground through a thought process, which doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not an empath like a Pisces. I mean, so... You know, if you're super emotionally sensitive, then maybe thoughts do calm you down. You know what I mean? But I think Pisces have a lot of internal dialogue that's constantly negative about how they feel. Because they're so sensitive, their internal dialogue is like, wow, that was horrible. Wow, that's too intense. Wow. So all of their internal dialogue about their feelings, usually, I'm not going to say it's complaining, but I will say their inner dialogue makes it worse. Okay, so their inner dialogue ends up making them feel worse. It's kind of like yelling at a baby for crying, all right? So Pisces need to change that internal dialogue to be constructive, nurturing, loving, compassionate, that internal about their feelings. So whenever they have a feeling, they need to think, they need to respond intellectually differently to their feelings than they normally do. Now, Mars in Aquarius for Pisces means that they're going to be changing their fate. And this is something they've been working on for a long time, changing their karma. And what the universe suggests is the way to change your karma is to change the way you talk to yourself about your feelings. And I can't get into it now, but this makes total sense to me. Our emotional vibration is what makes abundance. So if you are abundantly unhappy all the time, abundantly sensitive, abundantly upset, then your fate is going to be towards the cause of those energies and directions, right? If your self-talk and emotion is positive and nurturing and sweet and compassionate, then your fate is going to change to more of a compassionate and loving path. So for Pisces, the key is how you talk to yourself or what you say to yourself when you're having any sort of intense feelings. Rewriting your response to your feelings will be rewriting your fate. All right, so as you can hear, this is an interesting shift of gears, and honestly, 2018 is super fascinating with all the changes. This is really when it starts to get interesting here in this next 2 weeks. Remember, when you are reconstructing your inner dialogue, the master that knows the best way to say it is the heart. So if you're confused about how to talk to yourself, ask your heart how it would like to be spoken to. That, my friend, is the key to ascension. All right, that leaves us for our final segment. It is time now for some good news. And now on to some good news. Now this week I didn't receive any emails from people about their good news, and I want to underscore, I'd love to hear about your good news. Think about this as kind of like, I don't know if you ever went to church, but at some point they like list off all the announcements for the community. That's what I'm trying to do. I'd like to broadcast your good news. Some people have written me and told me that they have good news coming. That's great. But if you have good news, email it to us. I will put it out there among my viewers. I think we need to propagate good news. And if you have good news for us, email us at goodnews@seriousjoy.tv. Now, that said, my good news is good news you've heard before, but I want to say it again. For one, good news, I'm coming to Cleveland, Ohio. It's going to be actually on Father's Day weekend, so I guess mothers are great for this one. My audience is all female, so I'm not really worried about mostly female. No offense to the men. But I'll be in Cleveland, Ohio on June 15th, and I'm going to be doing a lecture basically on the steps to staying heart-centric. So how do we stay in our heart? How do we stay heart-centric? I'm very excited to be meeting my Cleveland viewers out there, and you can purchase a ticket for the event through centeredwellness.org. That's the name, centeredwellness.org. And there's also a possibility to win dinner with me afterwards. 12 people are going to actually have dinner with me afterwards. So if you purchase a ticket, you'll be entered in to win with that dinner. For more information, go to centeredwellness.org. Can't wait to be in Ohio on the 15th. The next good news is your creative fire. I brought this up before. Jennifer Dove is a light walker who has created a lecture series with, I'm not sure exactly how many, it has to be at least a dozen different senseis of their own thing. That's the best way I can put it. They all have their own mastery. And she does this very interesting, deep dialogue with them. And she's inviting everyone to watch these for free. All you have to do is give your email address to sign up, and these go live over Memorial Day weekend. So if you would like to learn more about your creative fire, and I'm going to quote Jennifer here, how to ignite your intuition, claim your joy, and unleash the life you truly deserve, visit namastetoday.me, and it will bounce you to the registration page, and then Jennifer will email you from there. Look forward to hearing you guys' thoughts on my interview. Jennifer was a blast. And then lastly, or thirdly, serious joy. Like, I don't know, I was thinking of secrets of birthdays. I went crazy there. I'm doing Sensei Secrets to Manifestation right now in Serious Joy. A lot of people have asked me, Chris, what's a step 14 person? What's a step 19 person? What's a step 25 person? Well, finally, I am making videos for absolutely every step. So if you're a Serious Joy subscriber, you have access to the Secrets to Manifestation series. And by the time we are done, you'll be able to look up your step and understand yourself a bit more fully. So if you'd like to try my Sensei service, everyone loves it. Trust me, it's just $3.99 for the first month. Come to seriousjoy.com. And then lastly, I want to promote our Namaste Today Club. It's a club on Facebook where I kind of live on the internet. I have my own website, but our community is at namastetoday.club. We just did the Love Festival in Denver, Colorado, and you'll be able to find the recording of that Love Fest in the Namaste Today Club. So if you're a light walker and you want to rub elbows with other people in the light, visit namastetoday.club. All right, friends, I sure hope to hear from your good news. I hope you have an excellent week rooting out your inner dialogue, and I'll be here next week when we begin to plant the seeds of the new conversation in our head. Until then, remember I love you, and to live, love, be.
It's serious joy, joy, joy.